everyone, this is RadTechShoe and I'm bringing you the next installment in my Rad Review series. I decided to play this game a long time ago and I finally got around to finishing it. I got sidetracked with a few things like with the House of Wolves DLC for Destiny. I had started this before that, and you know, the Black Ops 3 beta and Until Dawn and stuff like that. I got distracted by a bunch of stuff, but here we are. I finally finished it earlier this week and I can't wait to bring it to you guys. It's an okay game. There are definitely some elements about this game that I definitely don't like. I think that there are some, you know, aspects of this game that are just god-awful and just really bad. But you'll see, but I mean, I'm pretty sure money was the reason why, because this was a PS3 title that was released in, I think, September of 2014, if I'm not mistaken. And so therefore, it was released last year, you know, approximately 1 year ago. So why this was not made for the PS4 was probably due to the fact of money. You know, I can understand that, you know, the developers, they just wanted to make a game that was somewhat fun, but also cheap. They didn't want to go they didn't want to go overboard with the graphics or anything like that. So when they decided to make it a PS3 only title and no option for the PS4, no, you know, I was just like, it's a little upsetting, but at least I understand why they did what they did. And there are some other elements in this game where you'll see that money is the deciding factor and why some things, execute the way they are in the game. But we're going to be going over this in traditional Rad Review fashion. I'm going to be grading everything in 5 categories: story, gameplay, audio and visual, other mechanics outside of the basic combat system for RPGs, and then last but not least, bonus content. So I can't wait to bring it to you guys. Here we go. Let's begin. Fairy Fencer F. So right off the bat, when you start a new game, you're treated to a nice little cinematic that pretty much depicts the vile god and the goddess doing battle. They're pretty much fighting in an epic clash, and then they unleash their ultimate attacks, which launch a shit ton of swords at each other, which I find rather ironic. Not a super laser beam or anything like that, they just throw swords at each other, and they impale one another repeatedly, and for some reason they don't actually manage to kill themselves. They just get stabbed repeatedly over and over and over and over and over, and then pretty much what happens, like I said, they just don't kill each other, but they become trapped in this alternate dimension, and they're just barely alive, and these swords, which are known as Furies, will come into play later, and it's our job to try and revive the goddess and stop the vile god from coming about and taking over the world. Fast forward to the modern day where we get the main hero, Fang. He's pretty much this lazy, bum who pretty much all he wants to do is eat, sleep, and really do nothing else. He wants a hassle-free life. He's pretty much the equivalent of, for those of you who don't know, who are familiar with Naruto, he's pretty much like Shikamaru. He's just pretty much all about just, living a hassle-free life. And he's wandering around town. He finds this sword, which is a Fury, and it's implanted in the ground. And out of curiosity, he's like, well, hey, what is this? And he's like, oh, and the townsperson says, oh, if you pull it out, you get your wish granted. So he tries pulling it out of the ground. Surprisingly easy since he's the only one who's ever done it. No, it's pretty much like a Sword in the Stone ripoff. But once he pulls it out pops this magical little girl called Erin. She's pretty much a fairy. And she introduces herself and says that from this day on, Fang is a fencer, and they are going to work together to collect Furies. However, Fang, being the lazy ass that he is, doesn't want any part of this. He's not interested. He just wants a carefree life. He doesn't want responsibility or anything like that, and he pretty much just tells her, to piss off. He's not interested at all in her dilemma or why she needs to collect all these Furies. So, like I said, doesn't want anything to do with it, not interested. He's pretty much one of the worst protagonists you could imagine. He has no sense of responsibility. He doesn't really care about others. He just really, really looks out for himself, and that's it. And through some stupid events, apparently he steals like a loaf of bread and he gets thrown in jail. So Erin sneaks in, breaks him out of jail. They have to end up fighting some guards. So she shows Fang what her ability is, and that she becomes his weapon, the Fury, and is able to fight alongside of him. And he's able to use this in battle, and it drastically increases his power. That's pretty much what Furies are. So yeah, pretty much that's all it is she is the fairy, he is the fencer, and that's the relationship they share, where she will help him win battles by giving him increases in power, and he helps her accomplish her mission. even though he has no intent on doing that. And what her mission is, she's supposed to revive the goddess, but she has no memories other than that. She just knows that, you know, she suffers from a slight case of amnesia, and all she has to do is revive the goddess, and she thinks that'll bring back her memories and reveal her true purpose. Fang reluctantly agrees, and so we're pretty much, you know, on the epic. We begin the journey, even though Fang is reluctant, and he pretty much just says that he's only doing this, you know, out of obligation, and he doesn't want to do anything that, you know, and he pretty much wants to set his own pace. So anyway, fast forward. Here's the basic breakdown in case you missed it. A fencer uses a fury. The furies are another name for the weapons you use, and they come in all shapes and sizes, not just swords. Fairies increase the power of the furies and give the fencers increased fighting abilities, and the fencers use the fury to win fights and accomplish the goals of the fairies, whatever those objectives may be. And that's the relationship they are in. Alright, so once Fang and Aaron decide to work together, they head out to the Soul Plains on their very first mission together, and they find a Fury out there, and pretty much Fang gets distracted by the scent of something smelling delicious, and he finds this girl called Tiara. She's out there drinking some tea, and she offers them some tea. Fang, you know, being the dumbass that he is, accepts it, and it's paralytic tea, so he gets stuck in place. He's not dead, and she doesn't kill him, which would have been the smart thing, but instead it'll just wear off in a couple minutes, and she uses this opportunity to grab the Fury that they just found and run off with it. You know, a minute or two later, she's walking along trying to leave the Soul Plains area, and then she gets pretty much attacked by a low-level hoodlum fencer, which is how he identifies himself. He actually breaks the fourth wall by saying this. It's rather weird, but Fang then shows up, you know, after the tea's worn off, and, you know, he's able to move, and then he defeats the hoodlum fencer, and then they all team up together to collect all the Furies and revive the goddess, and the story moves on from that point. So from this point onward, Tiara, Fang, and Aaron they form a party, and they head out and set out on their epic journey to collect all the Furies and revive the goddess. And as with typical RPG fashion standards, you know, the further you progress in the story, the more people you'll eventually add to your party, and so on and so forth. And these characters are rather fun and unique. You know, my favorite was definitely Galdo. I liked his, you know, really cheesy accent. He was definitely stereotyped after a Canadian, and I just enjoyed listening to him talk. It felt rather fun and refreshing. But anyway, they arrive in the desert, and they're about to revive the goddess, and then they get attacked and ambushed by Dorfa. You know, surprise, surprise, the evil corporation that's plotting to overthrow the world, and so on and so forth. You know, you've seen it a lot of times. You know, the storyline doesn't get points for originality when it's like, you know, a bunch of, you know, rogue heroes, you know, stand up against an evil corporation hell-bent on world domination. So yeah, a boss fight ensues right here, and during the boss fight is when tragedy strikes. In the heat of the battle, Tiara is mysteriously struck down by an unknown person. Fang was distracted, so he didn't see who it was that did Tiara in, but, you know, at this point, Tiara dies. And Fang is overwhelmed with grief, you know, at the loss of Tiara. He, you know, I think at this point, he pretty much realized just how much she meant to him. He'd been complaining about her. They've been, you know, going at each other's throats the entire storyline, but they were slowly forming a bond. And, you know, her death really got to Fang, and it really upset him. So this is when the story actually takes a unique twist that I kind of wasn't expecting. It actually turns out that Fang and Tiara are sent back in time due to the goddess's power. Back in the epic battle they were having at the desert, the goddess's power reacted to Fang's grief and, you know, I guess, you know, the trauma he suffered at watching Tiara die, and it took Fang and Aaron, and it threw them back into the past, back to the point where they first met Tiara back at the Soul Plains. And, you know, they still have their memories, and they're trying to make sense of it, but they clearly understand that they were sent back for a reason. And Fang, at that point, decides to change not only Tiara's fate, but also go about things a little bit differently, because throughout the storyline thus far, he'd been kind of merciless, and he did not hesitate to try and kill people who stood in his way just because they tried to kill him. So Fang actually kind of starts to grow up and mature as a protagonist here, and it's actually quite refreshing, because, you know, I expected him to stay the same, you know, stay with the same personality trait that he initially started with, of being, you know, so determined and, you know, defeating anyone in his way. But actually he grows up as a protagonist, matures, and he understands the value of you know, human life, the lives of others, and he, you know, grows as a protagonist. It was a great feeling that I got to see Fang grow up and mature. So from this point onward, you're literally replaying the storyline. You're going back through the same missions and the same locations. You're literally playing through the game a second time. You keep all your levels and stuff like that. All it does is just increase the level cap. And, you know, that's pretty much easy, you know, but even still, the game's not too hard of a pushover. I mean, the game is, you know, it's not too hard. It's kind of, you know, some of the enemies are kind of pushovers still, especially if you grind. But at this point, you know, Fang decides to go about the storyline a little bit differently, and you'll see small changes here and there, including options to get people to join your party. But other than that, that's really the storyline for up until the end, up until the final battle. At the very end of the game, Tiara gets abducted by Sherman, who turns psychopath and is dead set on saving the world because his goal is to use Tiara's blood to control the power of the Vile God, because Tiara is a descendant of the Vile God. She possesses his blood. She is a direct descendant of his bloodline. So the danger here is that Tiara's death will prevent the Vile God from resurrecting. However, Fang does not care. He is dead set on protecting Tiara, and he chooses to save her over killing her. You know, he swore to protect her, and he's not going to stop. He's not going to give up just because she has the blood of the Vile God in her. So what happens is Sherman pretty much wants to kill her or sacrifice her to become the new vessel for the Vile God. However, Bernard here turns out to also be a descendant of the Vile God. However, he gets sacrificed unceremoniously, you know, rather abruptly, and his death results in the Vile God being resurrected and being absorbed into Sherman. So here we go with the final battle against Sherman, but as stated earlier, none of the boss battles were really all that tough, to be perfectly honest. This game was actually kind of easy for me. You know, I've played several RPGs that were significantly tougher. None of the boss battles, even the final boss battle, were particularly difficult. I just really did not find this guy, you know, he had a lot of health, but I did a lot of damage to him. And it was not a big problem at all, especially when, you know, I'm dealing massive damage thanks to all my stats being buffed. So this guy was really a bit of a pushover, I'm not gonna lie. The Vile God, the final boss, easy, cakewalk, you know. Doesn't deserve, he's not worthy of the title of being a god or the final boss of a game. So Fang finishes off the Vile God, and there's this blinding white light that envelops everyone, and all of a sudden everyone is back at the inn in town, and they're all saying goodbyes, you know, parting, you know, going their own separate ways and stuff like that. And it turns out that Fang Fang and Tiara are out in the Soul Plains area, reminiscing about where they first found. Where they all met, you know, including Aaron. But Aaron is no longer with Fang. She disappeared when they defeated the Vile God. In order to, because, you know, Aaron is part of the goddess. You know, she's like, her powers are, you know, part of hers. So when the goddess used her power to seal the Vile God, Aaron disappeared completely, and now all that's left is Fang to protect Tiara. And he decides to stay with Tiara, you know, forever. You know, they obviously become a couple at that point, and this is where the story ends. So, the story itself was a decent story, a little cheesy and cliche here and there, but I give it a 4 out of 5. At least it was entertaining, and it's really the only strong point of the, you know, the main gameplay, you know, is the storyline. And we'll get into the combat and the action later, but the storyline is really what drew me into this game. It's an okay storyline. It gets a 4 out of 5. And from this point on, that will put an end to the story, and now we are going to move on to the combat. The combat system in Fairy Fencer F is somewhat complicated, and I think it's unnecessarily complicated. So pretty much, you know, it's pretty simple. You have your basic standard attacks, which you just use to, you know, deal melee damage, and then you have magic and skills. Skills are pretty much, you know, special melee attacks that have that can either be non-elemental damage or can have elemental damage. And magic is obvious, you know, it's magic. It's an RPG. You can do magic. Go figure. Nothing special, nothing outrageous here. Some of the skills you have to unlock by increasing your character's stats, like increasing their raw strength, and then you can get more skills and stuff like that. And we'll go over that a little in a different part of this video. But the combat system is fairly simple. You just use your character's base skills to keep pounding away at the enemies. There's a lot of variety of moves, but many of them just don't seem to make a whole lot of sense, and they're all really unnecessary. You can literally get through most battles with either just mashing X or just using your most powerful skills and magic. It's really nothing. There's nothing too complex. There's no real strategy other than just overwhelming your opponents with brute force. You can learn the intricacies and all the special details of the combat system, but you really don't need to. You can just keep mashing X, square, and triangle for melee damage, or circle. Circle to cancel, obviously, but X, square, and triangle, just spam them and use magic and use abilities every now and then, and you're gonna win almost all your fights without any challenge. This game was not that difficult. So the fight, like I said, it's unnecessarily complex because you can literally just mash the basic melee buttons and you'll win most battles, and whatever battles those don't win, use your abilities and magic and that'll finish off the rest. I really never had to try to do anything great, and learn the strategy, develop strategies and stuff like that. It was pretty simple. You just mash buttons and you'll be able to do fine. This game's combat system was kind of dry and bland, in my opinion. You didn't really need to learn anything else other than just press X, square, and triangle, and then every now and then use your powerful skills on the big tough enemies. One part of the combat system that is probably my favorite part is the Fairize ability. Your characters can transform into their pretty much super forms. They attack themselves with their own weapons. They transform into this super, ultra mega power state. Their stats increase, they can inflict more damage, and each character at that point gains access to their super ultra mega giga hyper ability that can deal massive damage. It's kind of fun and it's stylish, and it's a nice break from just button mashing. And you can rack up excellent combos, especially when you do attacks like this on multiple enemies. It can really do a lot of damage, and it's fun. So yeah, in summary, there's really not much to this. This is actually a pretty easy summary for the combat system. You just mash square, X, and triangle, use your skills and magic every so often, and when the tension meter around each of your individual characters' pictures on the right side turns green, the circle around each picture turns green, that's when you can Fairize, and then they can do more damage. So this combat system is actually pretty dry and bland, and there's a lot of stuff here, but it feels unnecessarily complicated with combos and stuff like that. I just didn't feel any need to expose enemy weaknesses, or anything like that all that much. It was pretty easy and effortless to win most battles. Even the ones that felt like they should have been tough, they were pretty easy. So I give the combat system a 2 out of 5. It's simple, it's effective, but it just didn't feel anything special, and it didn't feel like it required any type of mastery or any sort of mastery whatsoever. It was pretty dry. Some of the attacks were cool and stylish and stuff like that, and your characters kicked ass and did awesome damage, but it just didn't feel like there was any reward to trying to learn everything about this game, about the combat system in this game. It just felt like, moving forward and pushing certain buttons, would get me through, and it did. This game did not reward me for precise execution of attacks and stuff like that. All you had to do is just overwhelm your opponents with brute force, and that was it. So yeah, combat system gets a 2 out of 5, and we're done with the combat system now, so let's move on to the audio and visual aspects of this game. Alright, on the visual side of things, I'm not gonna lie, this game is rather lackluster. The maps the maps and dungeons you go through are pretty lifeless, and so are the cutscenes. Visual-wise, I mean, these are the cutscenes. What you're looking at right now is what you're going to see a majority of the time when you're playing this game. There are some fancy cutscenes, like the one at the very beginning, and like at the boss battle with Sherman at the very end. There's actual CG cutscenes and stuff like that. But most of the time, this is what it is. It's just a bunch of dry, still drawings, and there's not really much of anything else going on. All you see are every now and then, you get a still picture and it pans left or right or up or down, and then you'll see characters just standing there having a conversation with each other, pretending that it's a thrilling cutscene or something like that. There's no tensions. That characters have you wouldn't know they're alive if it weren't for the fact that every now and then you can see them breathing. I swear to God, these are these cutscenes, I guess they do have a bit of a charm to them. This is like its own little genre of cutscenes, you know. And the developers over at Compile Hearts, you know, and NIS America, you know, this is what they're known for. They do this. There's other games that are like this, like the Hyperdimension Neptunia franchise and so on and so forth. There are other games that are like this all the time. But they're just so damn lifeless. I can't sense any enthusiasm from their expressions, and there's no energy, you know, in their movements and their actions. It's really bad. And, you know, the voice acting isn't all that great either. You know, on the audio side of these characters in the cutscenes, voice acting is pretty dry too. It doesn't feel like they have any drive to really sell these characters. I mean, like the most emotional scene, you know, where the characters put effort into it was when Tiara got killed and Fang was really upset. Like, that was the most emotional thing you could hear from the voice actors, was that. It doesn't really feel like all the other voice actors were really trying with this game. It felt like they were reading them from a script and put no effort or emotion into the lines. So that was very disappointing. Now, on the soundtrack side of things, the game is actually not too bad. There are some good soundtracks and good music. There's good musical pieces in this game, and we're going to use the sound gallery, which you get through a music box, which is technically classified, I would classify it as bonus content, but I'm going to show you the sound gallery and the soundtrack of the game firsthand. So yeah, anyway, the music is pretty good actually, a very good soundtrack. I thoroughly enjoyed it, and because of the soundtrack alone, it's going to bump up the rating I would otherwise give to the audio-visual section. Normally I would give it a 1 just because it was terrible, but because of the music being, in my opinion, so damn good and enjoyable, I'm going to give this audio and visual section a 3 out of 5. It was a very good soundtrack. The soundtrack demonstrated a wide range of emotions and expressions that the cutscenes and voice acting, to be honest, really couldn't do. Except for the death of Tiara, of course. That was like the best cutscene in the game, because I felt the most emotion during that. But we are done with the audio and visual section of this review. Now let's move on to the additional game mechanics outside of the combat system, of course. Now there's a lot to cover here. Items is pretty simple, you know, select an item, use it. Whether in battle or outside of battle, whatever can be used, go ahead and use it. And that's pretty much all there is to know about the item menu. Then you have skills and magic. Obviously, look at the skills and understand them, you know, and so on and so forth. That's really all there is. Items and, you know, skills or magic are pretty simple to understand. Next is the battle options, and here we're going to look at the weapon boost. The weapon boost, oh sorry, the formation first. We're going to look at all 4 of these, but the formation is going to be first. This is just rearranging your characters, choosing who you want to be your active battle members and who you want to be inactive, and so on and so forth. Then for weapon boost, we've got, you can earn these WP, as you can see in the top, Tiara has 129 WP. You earn these by winning battles, just like EXP and money, and you use them to increase the base parameters of your characters, and also to buy additional skills and magic. This is how you learn new stuff in the game, whether it be skills, or magic abilities, or magical powers, or even regular new abilities such as item sonar and vigilance. And learning is one of the best abilities you can learn, because even if your characters aren't active, if they're not in the active party and they're just, you know, they're not even fighting, they can still learn EXP, WP, and, you know, their fairies can gain experience, and I'll go over that shortly. But learning is one of the best abilities you can have a character learn. So I strongly employ that you do that. Here are the basic combos, you know, that characters can learn, whether it's Tiara's glaive combos, then there's swords, side combos, bows, gun combos. You can learn a variety of different attacks. As stated before, you don't really need to know the elemental weaknesses or strengths or the types of, you know, you can literally just equip the most powerful attacks and literally just overwhelm your opponents, you know, just beat them down. You don't have to learn about all these little arrows and emblems. I really honestly don't understand the difference, and I never did need to. I tried to, but some of the stuff just didn't make sense to me. You know, some can knock them in the air, and then some can follow them in the air, but that's really it. You know, the basic combo system really doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense, at least to me. Other people probably pick up on it, but it's not necessary in order to beat the game and to just kick ass and, you know, mow through your enemies. So right here, I'm just going to show you how to buy. It's pretty simple. You just go over to something that you haven't already bought. You just click it yes, and then that's it. So long as you have enough WP and you've met the prerequisites that are listed on the right, you can buy whatever you want. You know, it's pretty simple, and then you can just go and equip it. And that is exactly what we're going to go do. So over here, you can go to Combo Edit, and we're going to look at Fang's combo, since, as you can see on the left, he has first, and then he has second, and then he has third. This indicates the number of attacks he has. So the first attack will always be the edge attack, and it's not something you can change, or, you know, it's the opening technique that he has. But the second attack, after he does the first attack, you can do one of 3s. You can do upper, which is a gauntlet attack, you know, you punch your enemy, then you can do a combo edge sword attack, and then an FC shot gun attack. And then for the third one, you can do holy edge, helm smash, and power C punch. You can do any one of these. So we're gonna just select one of these. We're gonna select holy edge. We're gonna go and look for one of the launcher abilities we just bought, and I'm gonna equip one of them. And it's really simple. You select the one you don't want, then, or an open slot if you haven't put anything there earlier, and then you go and highlight the one you want, and on the right it shows you the stats on how strong it is. So I equipped full Barrett, and that's literally all it takes to edit your combos. And as you can tell, you can select R1 and L1 to change between characters and edit their combos as well. So now we're going to go over the basic equip menu. The equip menu, we've gone over all others in this area, so let's look at the equip menu. The equip menu is fairly simple and standard. You equip the armor or the rings, or, you know, you equip whatever you want to increase your character's base stats however you see fit. But down there you'll see a resonance effect, Melissa. That has to do with the fairies. Now here's where the fairies come in. The fairies are their own unique mechanic in that you equip a fairy whenever you find a new fury, because when you find a fury, that means you found a weapon that is being powered by a fairy. These fairies can be equipped in addition to what a character already has, but they can only be equipped with one fairy at a time. And as you can see, there's a variety of fairies with a variety of elemental affinities that each of them have, whether it be light, dark, earth, wind, fire, water, ice, it doesn't matter. By equipping a fairy, you gain access to whatever abilities that they will provide for you, whether it be increasing your elemental affinity to deal lightning damage, or to resist water damage, or to, you know, gain more XP. So when you equip a fairy, if you want to equip a new fairy, you just go down here, and right here, Fang is currently equipped with Melissa, and I can choose which fairy I want to equip Fang with next. And as you can see on the right, above all the list of fairies, you can see the attack and you can see the stats of Fang. And what by equip, now that he's equipped with Mia, we're going to go back in, we're going to look at this and be like, okay. But if you notice, when I go to Mia and I highlight Victoria, my physical defense and magical defense will go up if I use Victoria, but my physical attack and magical attack will go down. So it's very important that you pay attention to these stats and know which fairies provide which stat boosts. Now in terms of their elemental damage, all you have to do is just hit triangle to change the display, and your characters will eventually be brought up into a different menu, and it will allow you to view what effects each one provides. Each fairy provides a specific effects. As you can see, Mia on the left provides lightning support, confusion null, and if you want to toggle, press square, you can toggle the ability description to look at each individual ability so you're not confused. But confusion null provides immunity against confusion and so on and so forth. Lightning protection, lightning support. You know, each fairy, when you level up the fairies, they gain more and more abilities to augment the character, whoever they're equipped with. It augments their ability to fight. So leveling up the fairies is very useful, and as mentioned before, all you have to do to level up a fairy is equip them, and then when you gain XP and WP, your fairy will gain XP, and they'll go from level 1 and they can max out at level 10. So as you can see, there's a shaping effect right here. Shaping effects I'll go over in a minute or so, but right now shaping effects are pretty much used at the world map menu, and here's a Fury ability, learning. So if one of my characters, like Tia, for instance, like Tiara, if she didn't have learning, I could equip her with Shadowgun, and then she would automatically gain learning. But as soon as I unequipped Shadowgun and used a different fairy, Tiara would no longer have that ability. And you know, there's the base stats of looking at, you know, Mia provides 200 physical attack, whereas Shadowgun only provides 50 physical attack. So it's important to pay attention to all the stats, as it makes your characters significantly stronger and pretty much makes the game that much easier. Next up is the status menu. The status menu is pretty simple. You just look at the characters and it shows all their base stats, and you know, you can toggle the ability list and toggle the equipment list to look at what they're currently equipped with and what their spells and abilities are, and you know, what the fairies are what effects fairies that are currently equipped are providing for those characters. So it's pretty simple and straightforward. Excuse me. So yeah, it's, you know, the status menu, not all that great or important. You can totally skip over it and never worry about it, because all your other menus will pretty much tell you what's going on anyway. We're going to skip the play data and go over here to challenges. Challenges are actually unique in that they actually do provide something towards the game, depending upon what you're doing with your character. Like for instance, if Tiara jumps 700 times, she'll get a special reward. What is that reward? Well, she'll get a small stat increase. As you can see, jumping 700 times will provide a technique plus 6 boost, and it's a permanent boost. So by equipping certain characters as the main party leaders and having them run around and do stuff and find items and fight enemies, or just use their abilities in combat, whether it be healing or magical attacks or abilities or regular attacks or win battles without taking damage, depending upon what the characters do, they will get stat boosts permanently. They will get permanent stat boosts. They start off small at like plus strength 1 and stuff like that, but eventually, as you can tell, they get, you know, luck plus 6 and stuff like that, SP plus 20. They're pretty, you know, these things add up and they stack. So it's pretty easy to go ahead and just max these characters out by just switching around party leaders. That does mean, however, that one character, it'll take a long time to max out each individual character, but it can be worth it. The enemy info is pretty standard. You just look at all the enemies and you look at their elemental strengths and weaknesses, but you can just completely ignore this because it's not necessary at all. You know, you don't need to know much about enemies in order to beat them. You just attack and overwhelm them. It's pretty simple. And finally, over here on the right, you can save, load, and reconfigure the buttons and stuff like that, or you can head back to the title menu if you so choose. So that's really going to do it for the extra mechanics and, in this game. There's a lot going on. The fairies and the fairies are definitely the biggest highlight. But actually, there is one more thing I'd like to go over, and that is the world shaping effect. I almost forgot that. But world shaping is done with fairies, more specifically with the furies you get. You press square, and you can equip, and you can look at the furies that no character has equipped right now. They have to be free and not equipped to any player. And what you can do is you can look at the shaping effect on the right and see, okay, obtain money plus 50%, but obtain WP minus 10%. So by using these abilities, you can modify the levels you're in so that they can pay you more money and give you less WP. Or you can change the enemies around or increase your XP but decrease your physical attack. But doing this normally in the regular ground does nothing. What you have to do is you have to be highlight over a dungeon, over an area that you can explore and battle in. Then you insert the fury in there, and then now, as you can tell, I am highlighted over the Soul Plains. You can see its dungeon, you can see the enemies on the left, the Bee, Raven, and Orthoceras, and the effect that it is currently under is obtain money plus 50% or obtain WP minus 10%. However, that is not it. You can use multiple furies on the same area. So right here, we're just going to go ahead and impale this into the ground, and now Dax and Nyx are both here. And the Soul Plains is under the effect of obtain money plus 100%, minus 10% WP, and healing statuses are disabled. So as you can tell, you can just stack multiple furies into one area so long as they don't overlap directly on each other. But if they're next to each other, they can be used on the same area of the map, and you can just rake in the extra stat bonuses. One last thing that I need to go over is the Godly Revival mechanic. This mechanic is somewhat useful in that you're supposed to revive the goddess, and defeat the vile god, but you're taken in this alternate dimension from the inn in the main city, and you can go here and you can choose which one you want to try and revive. Now, what you need to do is remove all the swords from them to revive them. I personally have not done this. I have not completed it, but I've gotten almost everything off of the goddess. So what you do is you select one of the furies that is impaled into her, and you notice how up in the left corner, the stats change. There's one right here that's an S rank fury. In order to remove the furies, you have to find a fury out in the real world, and then you bring it in here, and then you select one with a corresponding element. As you may have noticed, some of the fairies had rankings of C, B, and A in the inventory that I showed you. That applies to this. So right here, it will take an A rank fairy in order to remove this fury from the goddess. And in doing so, it will gain the ability of Stun Null and the shaping effect of obtain WP plus 75% and reduce physical and magical attack. So depending upon what fairy you want to give what ability can affect how the game flows from there. So obviously, I think it goes without saying that you give fairies abilities and shaping effects that complement them. So right here, I've got one level C of fairy called Sylph, and I can give it Angel's Luck or increased XP and decreased physical defense. Now, once I use it, that fairy is done. I cannot use it again for Godly Revival. I can use it for World Shaping over and over and over, but once I use it for Godly Revival, that's it. It is done, and I cannot use it again. So it's best to try and find certain abilities that complement the fairy. For instance, gun prowess, it's not all that great for Sylph, personally. But what we're going to do is we're just going to look around and try and find good abilities and a good ability that complements them. There's fire protection, that's not bad, but wind protection, since Sylph is a wind type, and she already has wind protection, so it'll add to it. That's a decent idea, and plus increased physical attack and decreased magical attack. So right here, you pull out the sword. It initiates a battle, because these furies that are impaled in the god and goddess, they're protected by some form of magic, I guess, and you have to fight these enemies in order to successfully pull out the fury. And once you win the battle, you are successful, and you see the fury that you had selected earlier gets removed from the vile god or the goddess, whichever one you prefer, and the armor that is supposedly keeping them suppressed, a small chunk of it, falls away. So right there, and the fairy within has gained a new power, and it shows Sylph gained the wind protection and the shaping effect of physical attack plus 10, magic attack minus 10%. So right there, pretty simple, pretty easy mechanic to understand, not too difficult. So that's gonna do it for the mechanic. As you can tell, there's a lot going on here, and some of this stuff is very good, very powerful. So I'm gonna give the extra mechanics section a 5 out of 5. It deserves it because it has a lot going on, just like the combat system. However, this stuff has actual worth and value attached to it, and it pretty much makes the game from somewhat of a challenge and turns it into easy mode. I was just abusing this stuff left and right. So this gets a 5 out of 5, and without that, now that we're done with that, we're going to move on to the bonus content section of this game. Okay, so here we are with the bonus content. I know it's taken a long time to get here, and we're almost done with the review. Please be patient with me. But here we are. There's a lot of additional content online. You could get some new fairies. You can get special armor that is like, gender specific, like this armor is only for female, but there's also armor for males as well. You can get an assortment of materials for synthesizing. I didn't go over synthesis. It's something you can do down in the shop mechanic where you buy, basic items and armor and stuff like that. But it's unnecessary, and you don't really need to do it a whole lot. Next is this is, right here's more synthesis stuff. The Divine Jewelry, I think, is pretty fun. It's the Chosen One ring, and with this powerful accessory, you'll rule them all, which is a Lord of the Rings reference. I do enjoy, small little jabs like that. And then you got costumes like hot spring sets, swimwear. I don't quite understand why certain things, I don't know why, but, some people, I guess, really, really like that stuff. But here is something I feature is Shukesu's Tower. Shukesu's Tower, or Shukesu, I'm probably botching that. It's something that is unlocked after you beat the game, and it's pretty much a tower that, I personally have never even been in it yet, but as you can tell, you can unlock a bunch of secret hidden areas in the tower, and there's at least 40 levels on it, 40 floors. So this looks like something that if you want to play through and you want to beat the game and then go through an even tougher challenge, that looks like it's a great, great way to spend your time. You can unlock new level caps and increase, how high your character's levels can go, and you also unlock hidden areas on the map so that you can explore new areas, which will probably have even tougher enemies. So that's all that's really there for the online DLC. Is just, extra weapons, not extra weapons, extra items, extra armor. But there is one last thing I'd like is the weapon change. You can change how the weapons look, like in terms of color or appearance, and that's kind of cool. I do appreciate that, but that's going to do it for the online DLC bonus content of this video. Now let's go to the in-game content. Alright, so here in the Sunflower Inn back in town, you can pretty much go to the Godly Revival, but we already went through the sound gallery, which is all the soundtracks, so let's go through the picture gallery. Now there are several categories. Key visuals it pretty much is just concept art. I don't really understand the point of it being here like this, but events are certain events that take place in the game. They progress the storyline and show you certain characters, like Tiara's death, Fang saving Tiara, the ending between Tiara and Fang, and as you can see, there are blanks indicating there are certain events that I missed during my first playthrough. And here you just see basic map backgrounds. So when there's a cutscene going on and people are talking, and and there's a background behind them, this is it. So there's really nothing special about that. So the last piece of bonus content I have for you is the ability to start a new game with your characters the exact same as they finished the last game. So they're the same level and strength. And they have all their abilities and magic, and they're pretty much just unstoppable at this point. You're going to one-shot every single minor enemy in the game, and bosses take like 2 hits, like 2 or 3 hits. Like the boss in this area, I don't have the footage, but Tiara finishes him off in 1 turn after hitting him with 1 ability of hers. She finishes him off in 1 turn. So this was just pretty effortless. The game was somewhat easy the first time around. Now it's just going to be a cakewalk. You're going to be breathing on enemies and it's going to kill them. And that is going to wrap up the bonus content section of this game. I give it a 4 out of 5. It's pretty solid. There's a lot to do. There's a lot of stuff you can buy online, a lot of microtransactions, and some in-game stuff is fun too. However, I can't access Shukesu's Tower right off the bat, which is disappointing, which is why I wouldn't get a 5 out of 5. Alright, and that is it. That concludes my review of Fairy Fencer F. So overall, it gets a rating of 18 out of 25. It's a pretty decent RPG. The lackluster cutscenes and the somewhat dry and empty combat system slowed this game down and made it not as enjoyable as it should have been. But the decent story, the excellent music, and the multitude of content, whether it be the additional mechanics or the bonus content, DLC stuff-wise, you know, that stuff saved it and gave it a good rating. I strongly employ that you guys give this game a shot, and you know, I just think that this game is a lot better than people gave it credit initially, and it's a pretty fun title for a late PS3 title. I enjoyed it a lot, and I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Please don't forget to like, favorite, subscribe, comment below. I will see you guys all in my next video. This is RadTechShoe signing off.